This is the story of a lost civilization of ancient China that history completely forgot. 3,000 years ago, deep in the Bronze Age, a mysterious kingdom in southwest China built gods of bronze, masks of gold, and faces with eyes that leave the skull. Then they smashed them, burned them, and buried them in secret pits. They left no name, no records, not one written word. For 3,000 years this ancient mystery lay hidden beneath a farmer's field, until one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in Chinese history pulled it back into the light. This is Sanxingdui, the ancient civilization that erased itself from history, and the bronze masks that refused to stay buried. Chapter 1. The Lost Civilization Beneath a Chinese Field. The summer of 1986 is brutally hot in Guanghan, a farming county on the Chengdu plain of Sichuan, in southwest China. At a small brick factory, workers are doing what they have done for years, digging clay out of the ground to fire into bricks. It is ordinary, backbreaking, forgettable work. The kind of day that ends like every other, and then a shovel stops against something hard. It isn't a rock. It's jade, worked, polished, shaped by human hands. Then there's another piece, and another. The workers dig faster, and the earth begins to give up things that make no sense. Blades, rings, then the dull green gleam of ancient bronze. Word races to local archaeologists, who drop everything and rush to the site. They begin to clear the soil by hand, and what emerges over the following days does not belong to any China they were taught about. Faces. Dozens of faces cast in bronze. Faces with ears swept back like wings, with mouths cut into thin hard lines, and with eyes that bulge outward from the skull, stalks of metal reaching into the air. Beside them, a mask sheathed in gold, a human figure taller than the men digging it out, trees of bronze branching toward a sky whose gods no one remembers, and scattered through it all, the tusks of scores of elephants. By the time those first two pits were emptied, more than 1,000 objects had come out of the ground, bronze, gold, jade, and ivory jumbled together and scorched. These archaeologists knew the ritual bronzes of the northern dynasties, but nothing in their training had prepared them for this. The style was alien. The craftsmanship was world-class. The scale was staggering. And there was not a single clue, not a tomb, not a skeleton, not one written character, to tell them who had made it or why. Because the detail that would haunt everyone who studied this place revealed itself slowly, as the objects were cleaned. Almost every single one of them had been broken, snapped, shattered. Many of them burned, not by time, but on purpose, by the very people who made them, right before they buried them. Hold on to that, because everything that makes Sanxingdui one of the strangest discoveries in the history of archaeology grows out of that one impossible act. A civilization that destroyed its own treasure, and then disappeared. Chapter 2. The Ancient Kingdom History Forgot. The site has a name now, Sanxingdui, meaning 3-star mounds, after 3 low earthen rises that once stood on the land. What those pits began eventually amounted to a hoard of roughly 13,000 artifacts, pulled from the soil of a single ancient city. And 1986 was not even the first time this ground had hinted at a secret. Back in 1929, a local farmer digging near his home struck a cache of beautiful jade discs and blades. The very first whisper that something ancient lay beneath these fields. A small excavation followed in the 1930s, then decades of scattered finds. But no one grasped the true scale until those workers broke through the roof of the sacrificial pits. What they had stumbled onto was not a grave, and not a hoard of loot. It was the sacred heart of an entire vanished kingdom. And here is the sentence that should stop you cold. This civilization, wealthy enough to pour tons of bronze, skilled enough to hammer gold into masks, appears in no traditional Chinese history. It is named in no chronicle, no dynasty list, no imperial record. And it left behind no writing whatsoever. Not an inscription. Not a symbol we can read. Not one word. Across the Bronze Age world, the great civilizations left us their voices. Egypt left hieroglyphs. Mesopotamia left cuneiform pressed into clay. In northern China, the Shang dynasty, living at the very same time, left thousands of oracle bones scratched with the earliest Chinese writing. Everyone left a note. Everyone told us we were here and this is who we were. Sanxingdui left only faces, gold and bronze and ivory, arranged in the dark, and then silence. For most of the last century, the story of Chinese civilization was a story about the north, the Yellow River, the Shang. In that version of the past, the far southwest was a remote frontier, a backwater where civilization arrived late and second-hand. But there were old stories of a kingdom called Shu, tucked behind the mountains, ruled by a line of shadowy kings. Those stories were treated the way we treat most ancient legends, folklore dressed up as history. The legends even named the kings. First came Cansong, and after him a line with names like Yufu and Duyu, stretching back into a mist of myth. And the tales described a land so cut off by mountains that later poets swore the road into Shu was harder than the road to heaven. It all sounded like pure invention. Yet the ruins at Sanxingdui were no village. Beneath the fields lay the traces of a walled city several kilometers across. One of the largest urban centers of the entire Bronze Age world, lived in for well over 1,000 years. According to the Chronicles of Huayang, a gazetteer written in the 4th century, more than 1,000 years after the events, that first king, Cansong, had eyes that were muzong. The term can be read as vertical eyes, or more strikingly, protruding eyes. For 1,600 years that was just an odd line in an old book. And then the pits opened, and out came bronze masks with eyes that physically protrude from the face, cast as cylinders reaching outward into space. Suddenly that throwaway line looked less like fantasy and more like a memory. Chapter 3. The Bronze Masks with Impossible Eyes. Here is the confirmed archaeological evidence, excavated, dated, sitting in a museum today. The two pits found in 1986 held more than 1,000 objects, dated to roughly 1300 to 1100 BCE. That places Sanxingdui squarely in the same era as the Shang dynasty far to the north. But the art could not be more different. Where Shang bronzes are covered in tight, controlled, almost mathematical patterns, Sanxingdui's creations are enormous, theatrical, and almost surreal. Consider the centerpiece. A bronze standing figure about 2.62 meters tall, barefoot, draped in patterned robes, standing on a base of stylized elephant heads. His hands are curled into great rings, as if gripping something long and cylindrical that has long since vanished. Archaeologists believe he represents a priest or a god king, frozen in the middle of a ritual we can no longer name. There is nothing else quite like him from the ancient world. Then the bronze trees. 8 of them were recovered. The best preserved stands nearly 4 meters tall, rising in 3 tiers, each branching into 3 limbs, 9 branches in total, with birds and fruit and a dragon coiling down the trunk. In later Chinese mythology, sacred trees are the ladders between earth and heaven, the paths the sun and the gods travel between worlds. And the masks, broad angular faces with knife-edge eyebrows and huge outswept ears. Some are human-scaled, others are gigantic. The largest bronze mask measures about 71 centimeters tall and 131 centimeters wide, over a meter across. From several faces the eyes extend outward on stalks, as much as 16 centimeters, ending in flat discs. To stand in front of one is to feel the hair rise on your arms. They do not look like decoration. They look like they are looking back at you. But these were only the most famous pieces. There were kneeling figures with bound hands, and bronze heads by the score, each one subtly different, as if they were portraits of specific real people. There were birds everywhere, perched on the trees, capping the staffs, cast as standing statues, a civilization seemingly obsessed with flight, with the sun, and with the boundary between the living and the divine. And every one of these objects was made by piece mold casting, poured in sections and fused together, a technique demanding enormous skill, fuel, and coordination. This was not the work of a few artisans. It was the output of a wealthy, organized, powerful state. There was more. A gold-covered wooden staff, nearly 1.5 meters long, wrapped in gold foil engraved with a repeating motif of fish and birds and an arrow passing through them, a symbol of power we still can't fully translate. And a striking bronze disc with radiating spokes, so much like a modern steering wheel that visitors laugh when they see it, but which most scholars read as a sun symbol, a wheel of light. And beneath it all, elephant tusks by the dozen. That was 1986. For a generation, that was the whole picture. And then, between late 2019 and 2020, archaeologists opened the ground again and found 6 more pits. The world learned of them in 2021, when China's national broadcaster carried live coverage over 4 consecutive days. Out of them came a gold mask weighing about 286 grams, the largest ever found, hundreds more bronzes, 147 elephant tusks, and for the very first time the residue of silk. The new pits also gave up objects stranger than anything from 1986. A large bronze altar crowded with tiny figures and composite creatures blending human, animal, and bird into forms with no parallel anywhere on Earth. But every new discovery only sharpened the real wound in the evidence. Chapter 4. Why they destroyed their own treasure. They broke it. All of it. Before burying these treasures, the people of Sanxingdui smashed the bronzes, snapped the trees, and burned many objects in fire so intense it warped the metal. This is not weathering. This is not the slow work of 3,000 years underground. It is deliberate, systematic destruction, carried out by the makers themselves. And this is where we cross from fact into theory, so it is important to know when we've crossed it. The leading interpretation is that these were sacrificial pits, and the smashing and burning was a religious act, the ritual killing of sacred objects, so they could be released, transformed, and sent to the gods or the ancestors. The objects weren't trash. They were sacrifices, dispatched to another world the only way an object can be, by being destroyed. It's worth noting that no human skeletons were found in the pits. Part of why many scholars believe what was sacrificed here were things, not people. And ritually killing objects is not unique to Sanxingdui. Cultures all across the ancient world bent swords, shattered pottery, and burned offerings to send them into the spirit world. What sets Sanxingdui apart is the staggering wealth poured into the ground, and the strange, deliberate order of the burial. Layers of broken bronze and jade below, and then, laid carefully on top like a final blanket, the great mass of elephant tusks. A second theory ties the destruction to death and succession, that these were the possessions of a particular king or temple, ritually retired and buried when that ruler died, so no successor could inherit their spiritual power. But there is a third reading, and it is darker. What if the destruction happened in a crisis? What if war or invasion, or the sudden collapse of the ruling order forced the people to bury their gods in a hurry, smashing them so no enemy could seize, melt down, or defile them? Under that reading, the pits aren't a temple's calm offering. They're a civilization's panic, its last act before flight. Here is the honest truth. No single theory explains everything. The pits guard their logic as stubbornly as the faces guard their expression. Chapter 5. The ancient city that vanished. Sanxingdui was not a lonely shrine in the wilderness. It was a city, a real, sprawling urban center of the Bronze Age, enclosed by massive rammed earth walls, spread across several kilometers, and inhabited for centuries. This wasn't a place people simply visited to bury offerings. It was a capital. People lived here, farmed here, traded here, worshipped here, and ruled from here for generations. And then, around 1000 BCE, it stopped. The great city went quiet. The walls were left to erode. The workshops fell silent. A center that had thrived for hundreds of years was, within a relatively short span, abandoned. But its people did not simply evaporate. At almost exactly that moment, about 40 kilometers away, near the heart of what is now the city of Chengdu, a new center rises from nothing. Archaeologists call it Jinsha, and Jinsha is the key that turns the lock. Jinsha itself was found by accident, in 2001, when construction crews digging foundations for apartment buildings turned up ivory and jade in the churned soil. What they had hit was a second great center of the very same culture. A successor rising just as Sanxingdui was falling. Jinsha has no giant bronzes, no 4-meter trees. But it has gold, including a famous disc of gold foil showing 4 birds circling a radiant sun. An image so perfect it became a national symbol of Chinese cultural heritage. And it has one detail that ties the two sites together beyond reasonable doubt. A gold crown band engraved with the same fish-bird arrow motif that appears on the gold staff buried at Sanxingdui. A cultural fingerprint. It strongly suggests the people of Jinsha were the descendants of Sanxingdui, that when the old capital fell silent, its people didn't die. They moved. They carried their beliefs and symbols to a new home downriver, and left their monumental bronze gods behind, broken and buried. Which forces the question this whole story has been circling from the first minute. If they didn't die out, if they packed up their faith and simply walked away, then what could make an entire civilization dismantle its capital, destroy its holiest objects, and abandon the city that had been its beating heart? Chapter 6. Earthquake, flood, or war? The first theory is natural catastrophe by earthquake. A study published in 2017 in the journal Geoarchaeology proposed that a massive earthquake around 1099 BCE triggered landslides in the mountains upstream, and that those landslides effectively beheaded a river, diverting the water Sanxingdui depended on. Picture it. The ground heaves, the mountains slide, and the river that fed a great city quietly changes course and abandons it. Take away a Bronze Age city's reliable water, and you take away its life. In this scenario, the population follows the water to its new course, which happens to lead straight toward Jinsha. It's an elegant theory, because it explains both the abandonment and the destination in a single stroke. But it remains an interpretation of the clues, not a settled fact. The second explanation is flooding. The Qingdu Plain is laced with rivers and has always been prone to devastating floods. A single catastrophic flood could explain both a hurried burial of sacred objects and a permanent relocation to higher ground. The trouble is that none of these theories can ever be fully proven, because the one thing that would settle the question, a written account in the people's own hand, simply does not exist. Every explanation has to be reconstructed from soil, stone, and silence. The third possibility points not to nature but to people, to war, to political collapse, to a change of dynasty or of religion. A conquering power or an internal revolution could have ended the old order and prompted a deliberate ceremonial closing of the sacred site. The gods of the old regime broken and buried so that a new one could be born. And here I have to be careful, because this is the topic's most tempting trap. The alien-looking masks have inspired plenty of fringe speculation that the eyes prove contact with extraterrestrials. There is no credible evidence for any of that, and no serious archaeologist entertains it. The masks look strange to us because they come from a symbolic world whose key we have lost, not because they came from another planet. The real mystery is entirely human, and more than strange enough on its own. What virtually all specialists do agree on is quietly astonishing. The old legends were right. There really was a powerful kingdom in the southwest, exactly where the myths of Shu placed it, which should make us wonder what else we've been dismissing. Chapter 7. The New Sanxingdui Discoveries. The 2021 excavations were not a tidy epilogue to the story. They cracked it wide open again. And the work looked like science fiction teams in full protective suits worked inside sealed, climate-controlled glass chambers built directly over the pits. They lowered themselves on platforms so that they never once touched the surrounding earth. The excavation became a national event. State television carried it live for days, as millions watched gloved hands lift a 3,000-year-old gold mask out of the dirt. With modern tools, archaeologists could finally ask questions the 1986 diggers never could. Material analysis is revealing how the bronzes were alloyed and cast. The discovery of silk residue opened an entirely new dimension. That textiles and the ritual use of cloth were central in ways no one had documented. And most eerie of all, teams began matching fragments across the pits and made a chilling discovery. Pieces that fit together, parts of a single original object, had been deliberately separated and buried in different pits. Sit with that. They didn't just break their sacred objects. In some cases they broke them, and then scattered the pieces, placing halves of the same god in separate graves in the earth. That is deliberate, meaningful, and, to us, completely unreadable. A ritual grammar in a language we cannot yet translate. Newer analysis has begun to sketch the web of connections this culture had with the wider world. The elephant ivory, the sea cowrie shells, the very technology of the bronze. These hint at trade stretching far beyond the ring of mountains around the Qingdu Plain. Far from being an isolated backwater, this was a connected, cosmopolitan center, drawing wealth and ideas from across an enormous region. And the work is not finished. Large parts of the ancient city have never been excavated. We are, right now, in the middle of the discovery. Chapter 8. The ancient mystery no one can solve. So let's strip the whole story down to what actually remains. We know they existed, that is beyond doubt. We know roughly when. The height of their bronze culture falls around 1300 to 1100 BCE, contemporary with the Shang. We know what they made. Monumental bronzes, gold masks, sacred trees. We know they smashed and burned those objects on purpose and buried them in pits. We know the city was abandoned around 1000 BCE, and that its people most likely relocated to Jinsha. And after all of that, the one question that would make sense of everything remains completely unanswered. Why? Why cast gods with eyes that abandon the skull? Why raise trees of bronze toward the heavens? Why break every sacred thing you own, burn it, split it between separate pits, and bury it in the dark? And the deepest question of all, why, in a land that would go on to keep some of the most meticulous written records in all of human history, did these people leave behind not a single written word to tell us who they were? Every other great civilization of their age left us a voice we could eventually learn to hear. Sanxingdui left us 13,000 objects in total silence. It gave us its face and withheld its name. We can hold its gold in our hands and still not know what to call the people who made it. For 3,000 years, this kingdom lay a few meters beneath the fields of Guanghan. Above it, dynasties rose and fell. The Shang gave way to the Zhou. Confucius taught. The first emperor unified China and built his terracotta army. Empires bloomed and burned. And in all that time, not one of them knew that beneath the quiet farmland of Sichuan lay the buried gods of a kingdom greater than any legend. The farmers who worked that soil never suspected. The story of a king with protruding eyes was filed away as a fairy tale. And then two exhausted men digging clay for bricks pushed a shovel a little too deep, and 3,000 years of silence came apart in their hands. Think about what that really means. A kingdom this vast, this rich, this breathtaking, gone so completely that the people living directly on top of it never had the faintest idea it was there. If this could disappear, 13,000 treasures, an entire capital, a whole religion, and stay hidden beneath a farmer's field for 3,000 years, then how much of what we call history is simply the part that got lucky enough to leave a note? How many kingdoms are still down there, beneath our roads, our cities, our quiet hills, waiting for the wrong shovel in exactly the right place? The people of Sanxingdui broke their gods, buried their faces, and walked into silence. They never told us their name, but maybe the next civilization we've forgotten is already under our feet. If this story gave you chills, leave a like, and tell me in the comments, what do you think they were so desperate to bury? Subscribe to the Ancient Hour, and I'll take you to the next secret that history tried to erase. Because the ground is still keeping them, and it is still talking.